Greetings, scholars, and welcome to Following the Gong, a podcast of the Schreier Honors College at Penn State. Following the Gong takes you inside conversations with our scholar alumni to hear their stories so you can gain career and life advice and expand your professional network. You can hear the true breadth of how scholar alumni have gone on to shape the world after they rang the gong and graduated with honors, and learn from their experiences so you can use their insights in your own journey. This show is proudly sponsored by the Scholar Alumni Society, a constituent group of the Penn State Alumni Association. I'm your host, Sean Goheen, class of 2011 and college staff member. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. We have two guests on this episode of FTG. The first is Sam Bonsall. Sam is the Reeves family early career professor in accounting at Penn State's Smeal College of Business in University Park, where he teaches Master of Accounting and doctoral students and conducts research related to the impact of information on capital markets. Before joining Penn State in 2017, he served on the faculty of the Ohio State University's Fisher College of Business in Columbus and worked in economic litigation consulting at Bates White LLC in Washington, D.C. He earned a B.S. in economics with honors from Penn State in 2004. He also earned an M.S. in business administration from Penn State in 2004 and a Ph.D. in business administration, also from Penn State, in 2012. Our second guest is Lauren Bonsall, class of 2005. Lauren is a middle school math teacher in State College, where she teaches 6th through 8th grade students of a wide variety of abilities. Before returning to public school teaching in 2019, she was able to concentrate her full-time attention on raising their two sons. Lauren earned a B.S. in secondary education with a focus in mathematics with honors from Penn State in 2005. She also earned a Master of Library and Information Science from the University of Pittsburgh in 2010. In this lively conversation, you'll hear advice from both Sam and Lauren on engaging with campus if you're a State College native, stories from Penn State's bands, insights into economic consulting, returning to graduate school after working, and the K-12 and higher ed faculty job search process. There's lots more to come, so let's just dive right into our conversation with Sam and Lauren Bonsall. Welcome to the show, Sam and Lauren. I'm so excited that you are here. How are you both today?
Doing well, Sean. Thanks for having us.
I'm doing well as well.
Fantastic. So I know we've got a jam-packed conversation ahead, but I want to just start. It's been a wild year. If Sam first and then Lauren, tell me, what are you working on right now in your respective roles?
So I guess I'll go first. For me, it's a lot of what I'm doing is the same as it was before the pandemic. I'm working on research, business research, and I can do that, fortunately, from the friendly confines of my home office. The fall semester was when I did the bulk of my teaching, and that was a very different experience. I taught a hybrid sort of class, and then as more of my students tested positive for COVID, the numbers in the in-person part of it kind of shrank. So it was definitely a unique experience, but I'm sure Lauren can also talk about education in the world of COVID-19.
That's for sure. I'm a middle school math teacher, and we've experienced all forms of instruction this year. We've been remote. We're currently hybrid. I teach some of my students online at home. Some students are in person in front of me, and we're still changing as of Monday. More students will be returning to the building. So it's been a learning year for the students as well as for me as we've tried to learn all of these new methods of delivering instruction.
Yeah, I bet that's been quite the adventure, especially in the K-12 ranks, Lauren.
That's for sure.
Has there been any particular success that you've found with those tools in the K-12 ranks, or Sam, with you in the university setting?
One of my favorite tools that we're using is a program called Desmos, and it enables me to post problems that the kids can work on. Most of them have a stylus on their computer, and I can watch them in real time working through math problems and then give them feedback either verbally or typed to them. And it's been so cool to be able to watch them. It gives me insight into how they're thinking in a way that if we were all in a class, I wouldn't be able to look at them all at the same time that way. So there have been some benefits to being able to see their work in real time.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm just thankful that I invested in Canvas while I was at that school to the west of us. They adopted Canvas before Penn State did. And so I didn't have to learn that like a lot of my colleagues. And so I was good with that. And I've been teaching with an iPad in the classroom for basically my entire academic career. So using that and transmitting over Zoom, the problems I'm working in class was pretty seamless as it turned out.
That's fantastic. And I think to your point, Lauren, what my immediate thought was, wow, that kind of goes against a lot of the things you hear about screen time, being able to use these pieces of technology. But I know as somebody who struggled with math in a K-12 setting, I think I probably would have benefited from that. So that's a really kind of a cool silver lining in this scenario.
It is. And it makes the kids appreciate the pencil and paper problems also. I think that having a good balance between doing things on the computer and doing them on paper has worked really well for me this year.
That's fantastic. And I love that you both are innovating. I think that speaks to your experience as Schreyer scholars. And I know, Sam, you just alluded to some of your previous experiences at another institution, but I want to take it really further back. And I want to know, you're both in education and you both are molding minds at different levels. Is that something that you both always wanted to do, or did you kind of fall into that? I would love to hear kind of your superhero origin stories, if you will.
Yeah. So this was my origin story is nowhere near where I ended up. If you had asked me when I was a kid what I wanted to do, so take me back 25 years. I'm a huge Philadelphia Phillies fan. The Phillies go and they lose the 1993 World Series to the Toronto Blue Jays.
Sam, don't remind me.
Right. So, but at the time, one of the star players was their catcher, Darren Dalton, and he was my hero growing up. But he had a shortened career because of knee injuries. And my parents will laugh when I say this, but all I wanted to do was become an orthopedic surgeon and become the Phillies team doctor so that I could repair Darren Dalton's knees. Not really thinking through the logic that by the time I got through medical school and residency and maybe ended up getting that position, that Darren Dalton would have been well retired anyway. So that's where I was years ago. That one thing led to another. I still thought I might want to be in medicine. But then toward the late 1990s, I started trading stock online in E-Trade with a friend of mine and got interested in finance and economics. And so when I got to Penn State, I decided to study economics, and that led me into consulting. And then the consulting got me introduced to academics, and then I got my Ph.D. and the rest is, I guess, history.
My origin story is probably not quite as interesting or involved. I feel like from early elementary school, I wanted to be a teacher. I can remember lining up stuffed animals, my sister, whoever I could find to teach them at home. And it just changed as I grew what grade level I wanted to teach. I think that math first became exciting to me in early elementary school, and a specific teacher took an interest in my math abilities and really nurtured that love. And I had a number of wonderful math teachers throughout middle and high school, and it kept me interested in that career path. So I feel like I've wanted to be a teacher for as long as I can remember.
That's kind of funny, Sam. You really discovered this along the way that you love the academic side versus Lauren, you're sharing that, this is always what you wanted to do. And I think, for you listening at home, everyone has a little bit of a different path until you find that passion. And I think, even in a married couple, you can have differences there, which, speaking of, how did you two actually meet? It's not every day that we have a pair of Schreyer scholars that are a married couple and involved in the college and doing all the great things in the local community here in State College that you're doing. So how did you meet? I want to hear your story.
Well, we met in the, I guess, late summer, early fall of 1999. And I was beginning my senior year at State College Area High School. Lauren was beginning her junior year, and we were both in the State College Area High School marching band. I played alto saxophone. She played clarinet. Our ranks, which is the kind of small instrumental groups in the formations, as we call them, were right next to each other. And I was the rank leader for the saxophone rank, and Lauren was what we called the left guide. And so we were right next to each other.
The left guide of another scholar's rank, right?
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Yeah. So do you want to take it from there, Lauren? Keep going with it?
So we spent a lot of warm summer days outside together. And I just loved listening to Sam talk. He was always joking around, and we got to know each other as friends. And then I decided that I wanted to invite this person to the homecoming dance. And so late one night after a football game and a meal at Highway Pizza, I pulled him into a dark sidewalk space and asked him if he wanted to go to the homecoming dance with me. And Sam will laugh, but he told me that he needed to ask his mom, and waited 3 more days and kept me hanging. But we couldn't text and we didn't email and do those kinds of things at that time. So I had to wait my 3 more days. And he said, that thing that we talked about on Friday, I would love to go. So the rest is history.
Oh my gosh, that must have been one very long weekend for you.
It was.
Oh my gosh.
It was worth it.
So you're both locals. I know that there's often, you kind of hear 2 angles to that. Some students who go to State College area high school, they grow up and they're like, I'm going to Penn State, and others say, I'm going anywhere but. So how did, especially being in different grades, how did you both come to not only come to Penn State, but also select the Schreier Honors College as part of your journey?
Sure. I was definitely part of that. I'm never going to Penn State. I want to go anywhere but Penn State. Group. Both of my parents went to a small private school. And so I think that in their minds, that was the way that I needed to follow a path like that. And they were terrified about me being at such a large school that I would kind of get lost in the crowd. So I felt like all through high school, that was kind of the message that I had heard. Thankfully, Sam, being a year ahead of me, had already started at the Honors College when I was figuring out my path. And I figured out that I kind of wanted to be close to home, and having Sam at Penn State certainly helped and showed me that the Honors College really is a college within this large university and is able to provide so many of those small school aspects that I and my parents were looking for in a college. So I changed paths and decided that was where I wanted to go.
Yeah. So for me, Sean, I was in that bucket. My mindset, at least, was in that bucket of anywhere but Penn State. And so I applied to many schools, Ivy League institutions, other state schools, with the thought, there's no way I'm going to Penn State. But when you come down to it and you really think about it, there's something that's basically in your backyard that's a super wonderful place. When you're in high school, you don't really get to experience what Penn State is, except for football. But you don't get to understand what the Penn State college experience is about. And I had some friends who were in jazz band with me who were in the Schreier Honors College, and they were really enjoying their experience. And factor in also the financial aspect of it. When I was frankly thinking about the University of Virginia Eccles Scholars Program or the Schreier Honors College, and I'm facing out-of-state tuition for Virginia, or in-state tuition and the Academic Excellence Scholarship, and maybe other scholarships down the line. I'm a fairly rational guy. I was getting ready to study economics. These things mattered to me, right? And I would never look back. So certainly I didn't go into it thinking either, but I became one of those statistics. Like 2/3 to 3/4 of a typical state college high school graduating class goes to Penn State, and I'm proud of it.
And I think that none of our 4 parents worked at the university. And so it really was a different experience than we were used to being on campus. I remember walking around before school started and realizing that I hadn't walked anywhere except around on the stadium area or downtown. And so it was a new experience. It wasn't just a continuation of high school for us.
Like you said, Sam, you have this world-class institution, especially with the Schreier Honors College right in your backyard. So from a rational decision-making perspective, the rational being in economics or in political science, definitely a great choice. And I'm glad that you both made that, skipping a little bit ahead in the story, but you're both amazing volunteers with the college. So really appreciate that. But I want to hear about your experience as a scholar. We've talked about, you came in, you knew what you were going to major in, it sounds like, and you stuck with that, which is kind of uncommon at times. But I'd love to hear, you're involved. Tell us about what all made your experience special. What clubs or activities and research were you involved in?
So it's interesting you said that we stuck with our majors. I, in fact, did not stick with my major. So a little backstory here. My mom, more so than my dad, had this idea that only engineers could get jobs. And so there was a lot of pressure to major in engineering. And so I think to placate my mom, I actually entered Penn State as an engineering science and mechanics major. But I very quickly in I think it was ED and G100 class at the time, realized this was not my cup of tea. And I knew I wanted to study economics, but had a hard time convincing my mom that was a good thing to do when I was still in the house. But once I was liberated and living in Atherton Hall, there was nothing stopping me from going and filing paperwork with the College of Liberal Arts. And that's what I did within the first 2 weeks of the first semester of my college experiences. I switched majors. I was barely in the major and I switched to econ. And so then I stuck it out with econ and then discovered accounting along the way too, which was, I think had a big impact on me. One of the truly remarkable experiences I had in my time at Penn State was the economics honors program. So my honors advisor, Dr. David Shapiro, was he was in charge of this departmental honors program, which he was very proud of saying predates both the Schreier Honors College and the University Scholars Program. So the econ department had a history of enriching education for students. And it was a great 12 credit sequence during my senior year in which we studied kind of the philosophy of economics, also worked on our theses with a small group of, I think there were probably 10 to 12 students altogether. So we really got to know each other quite well. I got to know Dr. Shapiro well and Dr. Pinksy, who was the other econ faculty member. And I really think it was in that program, it really, I think, got me thinking about academics as a possible future career option. So I think that's something that I'm not sure that all scholars have that same opportunity within their major, but that was certainly a big thing for me. Outside of econ, a lot of my time was spent out on the fields, the intramural fields by the stadium as a member of the Blue Band playing saxophone. I can't tell you how many hours of practice over the course of 4 years that was. And over the course of 4 years that were particularly terrible for Penn State football, let me add, so the Blue Band likes to, or at least when I was trying out for the first time, like to bill this as you get this free trip every year at New Year's to these wonderful locales like Arizona or Florida or New Orleans or Texas. Turns out I got one trip in 4 years. Two, if you count the so-called Pretzel Bowl that we attended in Reading, PA during my freshman year. But that was a blast. And I made many friends, lifetime friends, being in the Blue Band, and many of whom were actually, interestingly enough, in the Honors College as well.
Sam, was that a Citrus Bowl by any chance?
It was, yeah.
You know what's funny is I think I may have seen you march at Universal Studios in that one good year in those dark years, as they call them. So if you were there, I saw you at that theme park marching down the street.
So after seeing all of the time that Sam spent with Blue Band, despite the fact that he was really loving it, I decided I was not going to try out for Blue Band, but I did have the chance to participate in the basketball pep band with him and some other Atherton Hall friends, which was a great way to continue my clarinet playing through college. One other thing that really stands out to me during my time at Penn State is the opportunities I had to actually teach math, whether it was during a pre-student teaching experience, which I had a number. I was thinking I got to go to Claysburg my freshman year. We drove in this 15-passenger van, woke up at 4:00 in the morning in order to get there every Tuesday so that we could work with students. I had another experience through an honors college class to go to Bald Eagle and work with students who were struggling to learn how to read. A professor or an instructor, I guess, of math, a friend of one of my the mother of one of my friends asked me if I would be interested in tutoring one of the intro math classes at Penn State. And so I was able to have that opportunity to work with college students and help them with math all the way to my student teaching experience in Pittsburgh. So I really had a chance to work with a number of different age groups and different math levels. And I think that really helped to solidify my belief that being in the classroom was the place where I wanted to be.
I think that really speaks to what I hear from so many Stoller alumni. Like, Schreier doesn't guarantee you the world, but it opens a lot of doors to our scholars and those opportunities that you only get because the fact that you are in the Schreier Honors College. So that is some great stuff to hear. I want to start talking about your transitions into, your careers, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you if you both remember your thesis topics and possibly what you learned out of that process.
So my thesis, I think, had a title, something along the lines of bank opacity and and monetary policy transmission, or something like that. I think what I got out of it is I learned how to do statistical computer programming. I learned SAS to do the data analysis, and that has served me well in the years since.
My thesis was about making the connection between children's literature and middle school mathematics. And it makes me smile thinking about it because those are my two passions. I love to read and I love to teach math. And after graduating from Penn State, taught for a few years and then decided when it was time to go back and get my master's that I was going to get that in library and information science. So it continued to kind of project what my journey might look like, combining these two loves that I have.
That is awesome. That's not something that you think of every day, being able to combine math and literature. I'm pretty sure
that my advisor still may not think that that's a very good idea, but it was fun for me.
Well, hey, you have that honors medal at home or in your, in your office. So certainly, or in your classroom, I should say, so I think that would prove that it was a great topic.
That's right.
So it sounds like, Lauren, you went straight into teaching. That's but Sam, I know you have not always been in academia. Can you tell us a little bit about your pit stop along the way in a different career path?
Yeah. So so toward the end, we started this conversation like me changing my mind and what I wanted to do, all the way back to my aspirations to be an orthopedic surgeon. I actually, by the end of my college career, I still thought I wanted to attend law school at some point, but I wasn't ready to do that yet. And so I took a job at Bates White Ballantyne at the time. Now it's Bates White, which is an economic litigation consulting firm headquartered in Washington, D.C., with the thought that I could kind of marry the disciplines of economics and its application to the law. So at Bates White, we were hired by law firms to write expert reports to support large-scale civil litigation. And so during my time at Bates White, I worked on securities class action lawsuits involving fraud, allegations of fraud. I worked for 18 months on bankruptcy proceedings related to Enron Corp, which was, when I was in college, this huge bankruptcy. It's, I think, the seventh largest in U.S. history. It's, the poster child for bad corporate behavior. And it's still, a big issue. Here I am now, 20 years later, teaching accounting. It still comes up. It's still important. But it was at Bates White that I learned that I was much too much of a quant to go to law school, is what I decided. And also most of the partners at my firm were Ph.D. or are Ph.D. economists and may have spent some time in academia before joining the consulting ranks on a more full-time basis, including the former chair of the Penn State economics department, Bob Marshall. And so just interacting on a day-to-day basis with these really smart PhD level economists and that just kind of lit the fire to maybe that would be something that I would want to do. And that, coupled with the fact that in consulting of that type, there's an unwritten rule that at some point in time, Bates White was a little less structured than some other consulting firms where it was a 2 and out rule. Bates White, at some point, you needed to go back to business school, get an MBA, go to law school, get your JD, or get a PhD. And so, little by little, all the my colleagues who started with me in 2004 started going off to graduate school, and I was one of the last to be at the firm, and so I decided I should probably go back to grad school if I ever want to do that, and so I went back to Penn State in 2007.
That is quite the the rebound boomerang, and I think a theme here is that it won't be the last time, right, Sam?
That's right. We can't get enough of this place.
So I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but so, you come back to Penn State, you earn your doctorate, and then what was the next part of your journey? And you can use the full name of the institution. It's okay.
Yeah. So and this is different. So maybe to kind of preface the response here, in business school PhD programs, business schools have historically had a shortage of PhD level faculty at universities. And so it's the objective to get a job as a tenure track academic, whereas in some fields, economics included, the production of PhDs well exceeds the number of positions at universities. So there are a lot of really smart econ PhDs who go to work for firms like Bates White, but don't go in academics. So I knew going into the program, my goal was to move into an academic position. But there's this idea in business school, and then again, this is not consistent with all fields. So anyone out there who's thinking, well, maybe I want to get a PhD in engineering, it's different in engineering. But business schools don't typically hire their own PhD grads. There's the term I've heard as a grad student was it was called intellectual inbreeding. Maybe not fully politically correct, but that was the term that was floated around. The idea was that you want to go out there and mix ideas with other people who were trained by others. So I went and did this fairly elaborate interview process during
That's an understatement. Sam.
Yeah. Winter of 2012. So I think, a colleague of mine actually made me a t-shirt with on the front said the Bonsall National Tour 2012. I think I interviewed at 21 universities across the country. But ultimately, I got a few job offers and ultimately decided to start my career at the Fisher College of Business at the Ohio State University, as they like to refer to it. And so that's where I got going on this academic thing.
So that sounds like it was a pretty wild couple of years for you both. Lauren, you mentioned you went back and got a master's at Pitt, I believe you said?
It was at Pitt. It was, but we keep that a little bit quiet too.
Great. It's a great school. It is a great school. We don't want to knock Pitt on the academics. We just want to cheer really hard against them on the field, the court, the rink, whatever, on the mat, whatever it is.
If Penn State had offered a Master of Library and Information Science, I would have been there, but you got to go where the program is.
Exactly. So it sounds like a pretty wild period, getting a master's, getting a PhD, job searching. And if I am correct in knowing a little bit about your story, I think there was also, you were starting a family around this time.
I was going to say it is correct. And I was going to say, we wonder sometimes whether Sam's 21 school visit or me working full time, caring for our 10-month-old son was the worst deal there. So it was a wild few months. So we were excited when we finally knew where we were going to wind up and we could be settled and kind of return to normal life again. Well,
I think I bet you learned a lot. And I hear more and more from students. You hear more and more in the zeitgeist about this idea of work-life balance. So I'm sure you both must have learned some great nuggets of how to balance a family, job searching, getting advanced degrees, and working all at the same time. So if you have a couple of nuggets that you want to drop for the scholars listening.
I had been working full time. Our older son, Colin, who's 10 now, was born, and I continued working full time because Sam was still in school. And then when we moved to Ohio, I thought that I would continue working full time and had some interviews and things didn't work out. And I decided to take that as a sign that it was time for me to take a step back from teaching. And that was really hard. I loved my jobs. I loved being in the classroom, and I really had no idea what to do being a stay-at-home mom. But the what turned into 7 years of me being able to be home with my boys, I'm so thankful for. And I think that it's okay to change your ideas about what your life looks like and what your plan looks like. In the past 2 years, I've been able to return to working, and I'm so lucky that I was able to find a part-time teaching job. So I feel like I'm still working towards that balance, but the ability to be in the classroom and also be a mom who gets the boys off the school bus when the pandemic is over, I guess. I have to pick them up from school now. But it helps me to balance. And I think that they are really proud of knowing that I'm teaching at the school next door. And they love asking me about my students and math. And so being able to kind of have my feet straddling both worlds has worked out really well for me.
So I think from my perspective, an academic career is actually particularly difficult, I found, to get to work-life balance unless you really work at it. And the reason is it's not a 9-to-5 type of job, because a lot of what I'm doing when I'm not teaching, right? So the teaching, you can think, you're teaching certain classes at certain periods of time in a certain semester, and the semester begins at this point and ends at that point, and you grade and then you're done. But that's only a third of kind of the job that I'm expected to do. The rest is to publish research, which is to come up with questions that haven't been answered in my field and try to answer them with data in some way, right? But coming up with those questions, it's a very unstructured process. And so it's really hard to kind of turn your mind off at 5 o'clock or at 5:30 or at 6 o'clock. And so that's been a kind of an ongoing back and forth. I think for me, what's helped is as the kids have gotten older and I've gotten involved being a den leader in scouts or an assistant baseball coach, is that, the practice, those are a natural way to okay, I've got to go do something else. And at least I could, for some period of time, can shut off the thinking about research or thinking about how to satisfy this anonymous reviewer at a journal's concern about the paper, this or that. Another way I feel like that work-life balance has factored in for us is a couple of years after I started at Ohio State, I got a job offer from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. And because of the stature of that school, Lauren and I, we took it seriously. We went to Philadelphia for a weekend for a full real estate tour and to meet some faculty. But the one thing that we were thinking about, was, we gotten comfortable in Columbus. It was a medium-sized city with a reasonable commute, a low cost of living, and a department where we were productive. But there weren't these, I think, astronomical sorts of expectations about what you should be doing and how you should be doing your job. As long as you were publishing, they didn't really care, if you worked from home a little bit, this or that. But just what I knew about Penn and the Wharton School, it was going to be completely different. The time in the office was going to be, the expectations for that were going to be extensive, the obligations greater, and going to a place like Philadelphia, we were going to live much farther away from campus than we were at Ohio State. And so then you factor in the commute time. And I think that collectively, despite the prestige of the job, it just wasn't right for us from a couple, a family, a work-life balance type of perspective. And so I think that, sometimes work-life balance is trading off maybe like the pinnacle kind of job that you're aspiring to, because taking that job necessitates trading off other things. And we weren't willing to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like, I imagine there was probably some very tough conversations and a lot of thought put into that. Penn is obviously a very prestigious school. Sounds like you were willing to leave Columbus because obviously you are now back here in Happy Valley. Again. So can you tell us a little bit about that process and how recruitment and job searching works in an academic setting? Yeah.
So it turned out that recruitment process was one that my former advisor really got started through just informal conversations. talking with me whether we would be interested in moving back at some point, if the timing was right. And Lauren and I loosely talked about it, but we still figured that the horizon for moving back to Penn State was still a number of years away because, again, this whole idea of you got your Ph.D. there, you can't go back. But I guess the success I had in my early career made it more feasible to make that recruitment earlier in my career. And I don't know, one thing led to another, and then I guess it was the fall of 2016. The person who was the head of the faculty recruiting committee called me and said, "We want to interview you to come back." And so someone will be in touch to pick a weekend. And so we're like, well, it's real now. And so we picked a weekend, and it just so happened we picked the weekend to coincide with when we were going to be coming back to town anyway, which was the weekend of the Ohio State Penn State football game. And if any of you big Penn State fans out there are remembering that 2016 game,
oh yes,
was when we blocked a field goal and we defeated the Buckeyes to really begin this trajectory under Coach Franklin that we've kind of continued since that season. Because the beginning of that season wasn't going well, and it really was that. I think that game was a catalyst for what was to become with Trace McSorley, Saquon, all those guys. So we came. I interviewed. It was the sort of the standard interview, academic interview. Come in, have dinner the night before. Although it was a little bit different because my advisor Carl, or former advisor Carl, took me out to dinner, so it wasn't like this strange faculty member. And then 30-minute office visits with the different faculty. Although I will have to say that the interview didn't go smoothly in the sense that we were supposed to go to lunch, and there's this Thai place in State College, Cozy Thai, and one of the faculty members was taking me there for lunch, but he didn't consult the schedule and didn't allow enough time for us to get parked and have meal before getting me back to to meet with the dean, which is one of the important meetings. And so it turned out we got seated, realized that there was no time left. So we had a little bit of our glass of water, got back in the car, zoomed back to the business building. And so I got an energy bar rather than a restaurant meal for my lunch. And then our department chair at the time, he had this tradition of taking the speakers. So part of an academic interview is presenting a paper for 90 minutes. And academic job docs, actually presentations of any kind, it's basically you against the world. You've got a paper, and everybody in the audience is attacking your paper from every possible angle about why it's not an interesting question, why all the statistics you've done are wrong, why the data you have is bad, why it doesn't contribute beyond existing literature. So that's what I'm getting ready for. And the department chair says, "Oh, yeah, it's my tradition, Sam, to take speakers to the creamery before the presentation." So we go to the creamery, and we have creamery ice cream, large portion sizes. And then he brings me in 5 minutes late to the start of the presentation. So the room is full. I've got to kind of fumble around with my USB drive to get my presentation loaded onto the computer. And then it's, the questions start flying. But it all ended well. A couple of weeks later, I got a call from the department chair with the formal offer, and then the decision making. Well, I think our decision was made, but then it was tough. I think it was really hard because I spent 5 years, and despite all the joking about Ohio State, made a lot of lasting relationships with faculty there. My department chair at Ohio State was my academic grandfather. He was my advisor's advisor at the University of Illinois years ago. And so there were a lot of connections established there. And it's really tough to tell them, hey, I'm leaving, and saying goodbye to all those good friends and good colleagues. But we were excited to come back.
That I've never heard about an academic interview quite like that. Is intense. I can only imagine that, especially with a belly full of creamery ice cream.
Exactly.
But I think to balance out, Lauren, I would love to just hear like what a K-12 teacher might go through in an interview process for any students listening on who have that on the horizon.
Yeah, thankfully it seems very easy compared to what Sam has described. I know that my process started when we were still in Ohio. I can still remember sitting in Sam's home office, the department chair here, who knew me, who actually I had for AP statistics in high school and then was on the team that hired me when we moved back the second time, called me and said, are you ready to come back? Because he had heard through the grapevine that we were moving back. And that was the first time that I had to make the decision about what I wanted to do. And I decided that I just wasn't quite ready to return. And then the opportunity came up again in 2019, and he called again and said, we have another position, and I think this would be great for you. And I decided that that was the right time to interview. So thankfully, it was a small group of people. I think the hardest part was that on this interview process, I had met the principal previously. One of my best friends was on the interview team. Another colleague that I was familiar with was on the team. And so it was awkward in the sense that I knew everybody. And, but thankfully it was just about a half hour of questions. I had a chance to talk about my previous teaching experience and coaching. I was able to coach the Math Counts team to a Pennsylvania state championship during my previous experience. So that was fun to be able to talk about that, and was able to get a call a couple days later that they were interested in having me back. So thankfully, it's not the same involved process that Sam has had to go through.
Yeah, that sounds intimidating. So it sounds like that might have been a little bit of a more, I don't want to say job interviews are enjoyable, but
right.
At least
No, it's definitely more
stressful.
Enjoyable. Absolutely. And I think that sometimes districts will ask you to teach a lesson. I think that because this group was so familiar with my teaching, that was not part of my interview, but I know that I've heard that is a possibility out there. So some people may have a more involved interview process.
That made sense. Kind of get a little bit of a vibe of what your teaching style is.
Right,
That makes a lot of sense. Which, speaking of, I would love to hear, and take this as you will, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, during, but like what is and you alluded to this a little bit with, some of the iPad and the digital tools that you're using, but what is a day in the life of a math teacher like?
I love it when the kids are working together. My ideal day is nothing like what I'm doing now. Today I was at my chair in front of my computer the entire time. And although we're making the best of it, in a normal year, I would never sit down. I joke that I don't even realize I have a desk at school because I'm constantly moving around the room. I don't like standing in front of the board and lecturing, but I love giving the students problems to work out that they don't necessarily know how to do it completely when they get started, but that they're kind of working together to do some trial and error or developing new strategies. So anything that I can do to get them engaged in the process that we're working on is my goal every day. I love to have them talking and sharing ideas, and it's my favorite when different people come up with different strategies. I am not a fan of problems that only have one way of doing them. So giving some of these multidimensional kinds of problems are my favorite way to teach math.
That's not surprising at all based on, Sam, what you're doing in academic research, and Lauren, as, as Stoller alumni, you're continually challenging the status quo in your respective areas. And I think that just is a hallmark of our grads. But, when you're a Shire Scholar, not everything comes easy. And I'd love if both of you could share, you could call them a learning opportunity, something that, a mistake you made along the way. And most importantly, because you are both Scholar alumni, what you learned from it and integrated into your life or profession since.
So I guess for me, this is post-graduation, I'd say, where I want to focus. But you might think that academic research is a little bit more of a kind of a by yourself, sort of activity, but there's a lot of collaboration, right? And so there's all the idea when you're going to school and you're doing group projects and you're bemoaning working with others and dealing with free riders and all of this stuff. It even affects professors, as it turns out. I think some of the biggest mistakes I found are choosing co-authors to work with who just aren't all that into research and participating in that whole process, because it's an arduous process to get a paper from idea to publication is often a 5-year endeavor for a particular paper. And so I've really early in my career, choosing to work with people I was friendly with, right? That was a starting point, and that turned out to be a not so good choice. And so I've been much more selective about the people I work with on research. And I think that just the importance of picking your team when you have the choice over those individuals, picking your team is so important to the ultimate success of whatever your endeavor is, whether it's research, whether it's a client project, or whether it's you're helping your students succeed.
And I think that in addition to picking your team, which I love that idea, that being prepared is what helps me to avoid or reduce the number of mistakes I make. I think that when I think about the days that don't go well for me, it's because I'm underprepared. There's more to planning a lesson than just coming up with an agenda. And there's a lot of trying to predict what kinds of questions or problems that students are going to encounter as they're learning new material. And the more time that I spend kind of brainstorming these roadblocks for them, the better my day is going to go, because then when they ask a question or they stumble through something, I'm ready to give them some piece of wisdom or nugget of knowledge so that they can continue working. So the mistakes that I've made can be solved, I guess, by thinking through scenarios ahead of time. I also think that when I learn best from it is when I then take notes after. It's easy to kind of teach my day and then head out and not think about it again. But I love it when I can go back the next year and see Post-it notes with information about how something went, or this was a great question that was asked this day. Make sure that you bring this up next year. And my memory is not good enough anymore to remember these things from year to year. But if I can write them down and then find them, rediscover them again, it really is helpful to me going forward.
Wow, those are really, really great suggestions for whoever's listening to this. Sam, something I thought of when you said about picking your team, sometimes you can't necessarily pick your team, but even when, something, especially any senior scholars are probably thinking about is taking that first job, right? And when you're interviewing, you're also interviewing a potential employer. And let's face it, in an office environment, you're around your coworkers as much as, or maybe even more than your family and friends. So that's a huge decision. And Lauren, great points about being prepared and leaving yourself suggestions and really reflecting, I think is the word that comes to mind on like, hey, what went well here? This was a great question. Let me incorporate that. Or, oof, that approach didn't work so well. So maybe I can change that next time. And Sam, you gave a shout out to your thesis advisor and some other folks, but I'd love if this is your chance for the both of you, if you want to give a shout out, thank you to any friends or professors from your scholar days.
Yeah, I guess beyond, again, just shout out to Dr. David Shapiro, wherever you are out in New Mexico. I think you've retired in New Mexico at this point, but thanks for all the wisdom years ago. And to Charlie Smith, who I still see in the Department of Accounting. You got me into accounting, right? If it weren't for you, who knows where I would be.
And I would say thank you to Dr. Janet Bobango, who is my student teaching supervisor. Once I decided that I wanted to do secondary math, you get certified in 7 through 12. And I always assumed that I would be a high school math teacher at that point, kind of looked down at middle school. Who would ever want to go back to middle school? And when I was getting ready to do my student teaching experience, Dr. Bobango said, I really think you should think about middle school. And I just thought that that was the worst idea ever. But I figured if she had faith that I could do it, that what better time than doing it when I had a mentor to walk me through it step by step. And it really changed my life. I've taught middle school every experience that I've had, and I love middle school. I can't imagine being anywhere else. And she really shaped myself as a teacher right now.
That is wonderful. I hope they get to hear this at some point. I just have two final questions for the both of you. First, you're both involved with Penn State in various ways as alumni, and I'd love if you could just give a very brief overview of the ways that you're giving back in that capacity.
Yeah, so I guess it's been about 2 years now, but I have been a member of the Scholar Alumni Society Board. And Sean, I want to thank you for coming down to my office 2 years ago ish and pitching the idea. It's been a great experience to meet alumni from all different kind of periods of time, right? We get to, we remember the scholars who, we went through the college experience with. And so I'll take this opportunity to, shout out to someone like Sean Misko, keep saving democracy. Okay. But it's been a thrill just to meet scholars who graduated only a couple of years ago, scholars who graduated before the Schreier Honors College when it was the University Scholars Program. It's amazing to see where people have gone and the different perspectives they bring to the issues, and really just how many people care about linking back to our current students and giving back. I think that's been a terrific part of it, and I really enjoyed being able, since I'm here in State College, being able to interact, at least before the pandemic, go into Atherton Hall and do a resume workshop like I did for the student council, and I hope to do more of that in the future. But it's been a wonderful experience.
Yes, thank you, Sam. I think that was one of the better walks across campus that I've ever taken. I remember it was a very beautiful, sunny summer day walking up to the business building from Atherton, and we really appreciate you having, taking the time to be on our Alumni Society board and being a leader, and some exciting things that you're helping to contribute to around mentorship that aren't quite ready for prime time, but we're developing them and putting some good efforts into them. So I want to say thank you for what you're doing and what you're going to do as you continue on our board. And Lauren, I know you're doing some other interesting things across campus as well.
Right. I need to thank Mitch Kirsch for getting me involved when we were back here the second time. She had me helping with the implementation of the pilot interview process for admissions, and it just showed me kind of another side of the Honors College. And this year I've just started working as part of a donor task force within the Women's Philanthropic Advisory Board, and just getting a chance to meet some fantastic women who are looking for great ways to encourage women to donate and participate at Penn State. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about that too. I know Brenda Walker and Haley Staub, who is a Scholar alumna herself, right, are putting that initiative together, and I really look forward to seeing what comes of that as some of our colleagues here in the Division of Development Alumni Relations at Penn State. So keep me apprised of that. I'm looking forward to hearing what's happening. The one final question for you both. This is a real fun one, but the important part is explain why on this one. If you were a flavor of Berkey Creamery ice cream, which would you both be? And again, why? As scholars, explain your why.
Well, it turns out, Sean, that we, so this is one of the listeners out there, in an interview, you get a couple questions up front to think about, not everything. And it turns out that, not surprisingly, the married scholar couple chose the same flavor. So we would both be the WPSU coffee break. And because I always need a pick-me-up, that caffeinated pick-me-up to get me particularly early in the morning, get me going. And it's harder to do the older I get, but I do burn the midnight oil. And so that's often helpful to get me through whatever work I'm trying to finish up for the evening. Maybe Lauren, you've got a different rationale for.
That was exactly what I had said, but you can't forget about the chocolate. I said we love cooking together and we love eating savory foods together, but we also both have a little bit of a sweet tooth. And so those little chocolate bits mixed within the coffee flavored ice cream, I think just provide that perfect sweet finish to the day.
Indeed.
Excellent choice. Excellent choice. You can't go wrong. And that was a very great, sweet way to end our conversation today. If any of our students want to get in touch with either of you, what's the best way that they could connect with you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Sam Bonsall. Since I'm a faculty member, you can find me on the Smeal College of Business Accounting Department faculty page.
And it seems like the education world is not as involved with LinkedIn. So you can find me on Facebook or Instagram or on my school district website.
Well, I hope that some of you, if you have interest in learning more and connecting with Sam or Lauren, will take advantage of that. Thank you both so much for joining me today and dropping some great bits of wisdom and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean. It's been a blast.
Thank you, scholars, for listening and learning with us today. We hope you will take something with you that will contribute to how you shape the world. This show proudly supports the Schreier Honors College Emergency Fund, benefiting scholars experiencing unexpected financial hardship. You can make a difference at raise.psu.edu/Schreier. Please be sure to hit the relevant subscribe, like, or follow button on whichever platform you are engaging with us on today. You can follow the college on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn to stay up to date on news, events, and deadlines. If you have questions about the show or are a Scholar alum who'd like to join us as a guest here on Following the Gone, please connect with me at scholaralumni@psu.edu. Until next time, please stay well, and we are